So I'm going to talk to you about Expo Snack. So on the web, you have something like CodePen or JS Fiddle and that sort of thing where you can just add some code to an editor within your browser, see the changes right away, then share this URL with somebody and they can see what you built, and it's absolutely minimal effort. So React Native had something called React Native Playground for a while. React Native Playground worked kind of well. I helped out building this with Josh Searles, and unfortunately, it suffered from some fatal flaws in the architecture. So every time you made a change, the React Native Play website would send any of the code, in fact, all of the code that you have in the editor, over to the React Native packager. The packager would then build an entire bundle, which would be maybe 800 kilobytes, I don't know, one megabyte, something like that. And then it would send that over to your device. Your device would have to parse, well, first download, of course, parse and execute the bundle in order to see the change. So that's, of course, a very slow feedback loop. And so it also kind of tied the whole process to the React Native packager, which is, it's coming along, but it's not always the most reliable of things. And so what Snack does instead is when you make a change in the web editor, it will send the code in the editor, similar to before. But instead, on the device, what's actually happening is, first of all, you're only downloading the code that's inside of the editor on the device. And then on the device, we actually transpile it and then remount the root component with whatever component is exported in the Snack example. So it's probably easier to just show it. So here's just a silly thing you can do with it, right? We have export default class app extends component, and then we're rendering a nyancat. You can see it updates pretty quickly. If I change these properties, right, whatever. So yeah, so that's a lot quicker than what it would have been if it had to rebuild the entire bundle and download that and re-execute it. So here's another example of stuff that you can do with it. So here I'm using Apollo and connecting to the React Europe GraphQL API. And in 100 lines of code, I have this example of, well, it's not letting me click properly in the simulator, but it shows the entire schedule for the conference and fairly straightforward stuff. This one I think is kind of interesting. So yesterday, Apollo launched Launchpad. So Launchpad lets you really easily create a GraphQL endpoint in the same way that all these other playground tools let you do things for like a UI. Launchpad lets you create a GraphQL server just on the fly. And at the bottom of the screen, which you might not be able to see, there's a URL for a GraphQL endpoint that you can hit. All I'm doing at this endpoint is given a greeting. If you're asked for a greeting, it returns hello world. So we have to put greeting here. You can see that auto-completes. Do that. Hello React Europe. And so that's what we see here as well. And we can kind of change anything we want on the fly. Let's add extra exclamation points to the end. And it'll actually go fetch the data again and show an update. And you can open this on your phone using the Expo app if you scan this QR code. And so you get like live React Native editing inside of a browser without installing any dependencies whatsoever, as long as you install the Expo app on your phone. Or as you can see here, you can use an in-browser simulator, which is provided by a company called Appetize. You get access to all of the APIs that Expo provides. So for example, as James was mentioning yesterday, we have a graphics API. It's called XGL, but it is compatible with WebGL, and so you can use things like 3JS. So here we just have some simple rotating cube. You can also embed these examples. So on the Apollo client website, for example. Yeah, we really like Apollo, so that's why I'm using Apollo a lot in these examples. You could see there that they, at the top of their site, have an embedded version of the snack editor, because, I mean, you can just open it up right there, see the examples live, open it on your phone, get a sense for it, see it update immediately, and really, quick feedback is super important to getting a feel for a tool, and not only like when you first get started for learning, but also as you progress later on, when you want to iterate on your product and you want to be able to do it quickly, feedback is just essential. So here, there's an example. It just says uncomment this line to get stars. So okay, let's uncomment that. Okay, now we have stars on the side there. So it's just showing you like this is how easy it is with Apollo and with GraphQL to get additional data and show that inside of your app. You can also use it to embed in like documentation. Like here it is in the React Native documentation. We're starting to add it in more places there. Because you know, what's the point of having some code in there if it takes you 5 minutes to copy and paste that into a new project, run the project, maybe the code is stale because nobody's actually run it in a while and it's just sitting in the examples, never being executed, and so you pull it in and it doesn't work. In this case, we just embed it directly into the documentation, and we're going to continue adding this in more places. We do it, for example, in the Expo documentation itself. Here's an example using a map view. This is using the maps library by Airbnb. Leland, who is here and speaking, I think, later today, built this library largely, and it works quite well. So a great way to play with it and get a feel for what you can do and what the props do and that kind of thing is to open an example like this and just, you know, let's change the latitude to 50 or something like that. And it'll just reload the app and jump right to that point. You can also use it, of course, for bug reporting. We added an issue template in the React Native repo saying, please share an example of this reproducing this inside of Snack. Because if they're able to do that, we know, well, first of all, it'll probably eliminate half the bug reports because when you actually try and reproduce the example, usually you realize you're doing something wrong. And in this case, at the very least, we get it running really quickly, and we can test a few quick ideas for what might be the problem. And otherwise, we can just copy and paste it into another project and dig into it further. We also have a SDK for it, so you don't have to use an embed, or you don't have to use Snack itself. You can basically just use the infrastructure that it provides. And so REPL it, which is a really fantastic tool that gives you REPLs for all sorts of different languages. They also have a classrooms product, so you can basically create lessons and then test whether the assignment passes some criteria that's specified for the assignment. And so they've created a small but growing React Native course that you can do entirely using this without installing React Native, without really installing anything except for one single app on your phone, which I'm sure anybody can do. And so, you know, it's about making it available. It's about making it so that people can try it and lower the barrier to entry to it. You can use it at meetups if you want to show people how to do something. This is in React Paris. I think Patrick did this, and you have a massive QR code on the screen so everyone can scan that and open it up. And if they scan it and you're making changes, all of the devices will update at the same time, so they'll see the changes as they're happening. If you get an error because there's a typo while you're doing it, it'll recover from the error message will go away, you'll see what you expect to see there. We used it during the workshop. I did a React Native workshop for the last couple of days. It was just an easy way to spin something up and say, here's this example of how to do, let's say, animations as you scroll and integrate with this thing called a native driver. And so I was able to do that here, save it, paste it in the Slack channel, and then you get this runnable piece of code that's going to continue to work that you can share with other people. And yeah. The last thing worth mentioning is that we're working right now on integrating with installing any arbitrary NPM package. So we include things like Apollo and a few other libraries and all the Expo SDK in Snack by default. But of course, a lot of people want to be able to install their own package and maybe use it for their own documentation, for their React Native library or whatever library they have. And so in that case, you know, you need to be able to install this package. So we're working on this and should have it ready in about a month. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to, oh, it's not letting me scroll. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. So yeah, definitely check it out. It's snack.expo.io. And yeah, have fun.